Have you ever wondered how to put together the perfect meal at BARF without getting lost in complicated measurements? In this video, you will discover the daily BARF checklist with everything your dog needs in a single meal, in a practical, balanced, and safe way. If you want to improve your dog's health, energy, and longevity, this video is the ultimate guide you need to watch to the end. BARF is not fashion, it is science, applied to the care of your best friend. And with this daily checklist, you will have in your hands a simple script to transform your pet's food into a true act of love. The transition to a natural BARF-type diet may seem, at first glance, a challenge full of complicated details. However, when the owner understands the logic behind this nutrition, he realizes that it is about giving the dog back what it was biologically programmed to receive: a complete, balanced meal designed to strengthen each system of the body. The daily checklist works like a map, a sequence of elements that, together, guarantee energy, intestinal health, shiny coat, clean teeth, and longevity. The secret is to see each item not only as food, but as an essential pillar in building the animal's vitality. The starting point of any BARF meal is raw meat with a meaty bone. That's the core of the diet. Fleshy bones are not only a source of natural calcium, they also help clean teeth mechanically, preventing tartar buildup and bad breath. When chewing, the dog exercises facial muscles, releases endorphins, and maintains the natural instinct to gnaw. However, there is a crucial precaution. Never offer cooked bones, which can fragment and cause injuries. Ideally, raw fleshy bones, such as chicken necks, wings, lamb ribs, or similar parts, always with a ratio that is around 60% of the total meal. Many beginner owners make the mistake of overdoing the amount of bones, which can cause constipation or reducing them too much, which leads to mineral deficiencies. Balance here is the key word. After the main pillar, the second component of the checklist comes in lean meat without bones, which should represent about 15% of the meal. This portion is responsible for providing high-quality proteins and essential amino acids that support muscle development, enzyme production, and cell regeneration. Cuts like beef heart, chicken breast, and turkey meat fit nicely. Lean meat is also an excellent source of zinc and iron, minerals that are indispensable for keeping the immune system strong and for proper oxygenation of the blood. When poorly planned, this part can generate hyperproteic diets without balance, so it must be adjusted according to the dog's size and physical activity. An active dog needs more protein fuel, while a more sedentary dog requires smaller portions so as not to overload the kidneys. The third element of the checklist is formed by the internal organs, which occupy about 10% of the meal. Although many tutors feel some resistance when dealing with the liver, kidney, or spleen, it is precisely these foods that transform the diet into something complete. Liver, for example, is a true natural multivitamin. It concentrates B vitamins, vitamin A, iron, and copper. It acts on vision, skin health, nervous system functioning, and even hormonal balance. The kidney, on the other hand, contributes selenium and zinc, while the heart is a source of taurine, an amino acid crucial for heart health. The big mistake of beginners is to offer too much liver, which can lead to hypervitaminosis A. Therefore, the rule is clear. Organs, yes, but always in balance and variety. In addition to meat and organs, the daily checklist includes a fourth item that is often underestimated: the mixture of crushed vegetables. Accounting for about 10% of the meal, these vegetables mimic the stomach contents of prey that dogs would consume in the wild. When well crushed or lightly steamed, they release fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants that contribute to intestinal health and weight management. Carrots, squash, broccoli, spinach, and zucchini are ideal options. Shredding is essential because dogs don't have the same ability as us to break down plant cell walls. Without this preparation, most of the nutrients simply pass through the digestive tract intact. The rule is clear: always crushed vegetables, never offered whole as the main part of the meal. Last but not least, the fifth item on the checklist appears: sources of good fat and natural supplements. Animal fat, naturally present in meats, provides dense energy and helps in the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. Natural supplements such as fish oil, crushed flax seeds, and coconut oil add essential fatty acids such as omega-3 and omega-6, which reduce inflammation, improve the skin, and strengthen the nervous system. A dog deficient in good fats may experience hair loss, dry skin, mood swings, and even cognitive problems. The caution here is not to overdo it. Excess oils can generate diarrhea and weight gain. The recommendation is to offer it in a dosed way, adapted to the size and level of activity of the animal. That's the heart of the BARF checklist: meaty bones, lean meat, organs, crushed vegetables, and good fats. But understanding the elements is just the beginning. The real challenge is to integrate them daily in a balanced way, avoiding excesses, deficiencies, or combinations that can generate digestive discomfort. It is at this point that the tutor begins to realize that BARF is not an improvisation, but a science that respects the dog's biology. When done well, it transforms each meal into an act of deep care, where food becomes synonymous with health and longevity. And as the tutor adjusts each portion with care, an inevitable question arises. Is it enough to just follow the 5 basic items, or are there still secrets hidden in this checklist, capable of taking the dog's health to another level? Understanding the 5 pillars of the BARF meal is critical, but the true power of this daily checklist only reveals itself when we dive into the details that turn theory into practice. Many owners believe that it is enough to throw the ingredients in the bowl and that's it, but the reality is that each choice carries profound consequences on the dog's health. The secret lies not only in selecting the right foods, but in understanding the logic behind their combinations, textures, frequencies, and proportions. It is like assembling a puzzle in which each piece fits together to form the portrait of vitality. The first detail that usually raises doubts is the exact proportion between the items. Although the formula 60% fleshy bones, 15% lean meats, 10% organs, 10% vegetables, and 5% good fats is the foundation, it is not rigid as stone. Puppies, for example, need a little more calcium and phosphorus, which makes fleshy bones even more essential. Elderly dogs, or those with poor mobility, on the other hand, may require adjustments to reduce energy density, avoiding obesity. Flexibility lies in adapting the checklist to the animal's stage of life and state of health, without ever losing the essence of balance. Another crucial point is the variety within each group. Many owners make the mistake of always offering the same cut, the same meat, or the same vegetables. Not only does this limit nutrient intake, but it also increases the risk of silent deficiencies. Switching between chicken, turkey, lamb, beef, and even fish broadens the spectrum of amino acids, minerals, and vitamins. In vegetables, varying between green leaves, roots, and light fruits ensures diversity of fiber and antioxidants. When the diet is repeated in a monotonous way, the dog may even seem healthy for a while, but the body begins to pick up the bill in the form of allergies, low immunity, or a drop in energy. The daily checklist, therefore, is not only about fixed ratios, but also about smart variety. Food preparation also carries secrets that can make the difference between a balanced meal and a health risk. Cleaning and freezing are 2 indispensable steps. Quality raw meats should be frozen beforehand for at least 3 days before consumption, reducing the presence of parasites such as toxoplasma. This simple practice increases the safety of the diet without compromising nutritional value. Vegetables, in turn, should always be crushed or steamed, releasing nutrients that would otherwise not be used by the canine body. This attention to detail separates the careful tutor from the one who just improvises without understanding the risks. One of the most common mistakes of those who start on BARF is to believe that natural supplements are optional. However, they work as fine-tuning that fills in the gaps of the diet. Fish oil, for example, provides EPA and DHA, fatty acids with anti-inflammatory action that are not present in abundance in land-based meats. The raw egg, offered occasionally, is a superfood that brings protein, B vitamins, and biotin, strengthening the coat and skin health. Even small amounts of lactose-free plain yogurt or kefir can support gut flora by stimulating beneficial bacteria. Ignoring these details can mean missing out on the opportunity to turn a good meal into a perfect meal. But perhaps the point most neglected by beginners is the observation of the dog after each meal. The daily checklist doesn't end when the bowl is empty. In fact, it is the response of the animal's body that confirms whether the meal has been balanced. Very hard stools may indicate excess bones. Loose stools, excess fat or vegetables. Dull coat, lack of energy, or itching can signal deficiencies or intolerances. The attentive tutor notices these signs and adjusts the diet dynamically, understanding that each dog is unique and that the checklist works as a guide but never as a straitjacket. By understanding these deeper layers, the owner realizes that feeding with BARF is not just about fulfilling a list, but developing a connection with the dog's body and needs. It is a process of constant learning, where observation is combined with technical knowledge. With each meal, with each adjustment, not only the animal's health is built, but also the confidence that the best possible is being offered. And it is precisely at this point that the question that guides the most experienced tutors arises: how to turn this checklist into a practical routine, without it becoming a daily weight or an impossible task to maintain over the years. Turning the BARF checklist into a practical routine is the point where many tutors stumble. It's not just about knowing what to offer, but about creating a system that makes meal preparation simple, sustainable, and flawless. After all, a dog's health cannot depend on last-minute improvisations. Therefore, every detail of daily organization becomes part of the secret of success. The first step is to understand the logistics of preparation. Freezing portions in advance is what separates discipline from chaos. Tutors who plan the whole week avoid the stress of cutting meat every day and ensure consistency in the balance of meals. The most efficient practice is to buy meat and bones in quantity, separate them into individual packages with the correct proportions of bones, lean meats, organs, and crushed vegetables, and freeze them. Each package becomes a ready-made meal, simply thawing in the refrigerator for 12 to 24 hours. This routine creates predictability and reduces errors, making the checklist automatic. Another essential aspect is the defrosting time. Many believe that it is enough to remove the meat from the freezer a few hours before serving, but this increases the risk of contamination. The ideal is always to thaw slowly in the refrigerator, preserving nutrients and avoiding bacterial proliferation. Careful tutors keep a sequence of packages already thawing, ensuring that the next day's meal is ready. This transforms the process into a continuous cycle without improvisation. However, organizing does not mean losing the notion of freshness. The attentive tutor needs to master the balance between practicality and quality. Vegetables, for example, should be prepared in small quantities so as not to lose vitamins over time. An efficient solution is to grind weekly portions, freeze them in ice cubes, and add them directly to meals. This small detail allows vegetables to maintain much of their nutritional value and, at the same time, makes life easier for the tutor. Consistency also depends on another factor: adapting the checklist to the dog's size and energy. A large dog with an active routine needs larger portions and may require adjustments in the percentage of protein, while a small or more sedentary dog requires fewer calories and stricter control of fats. The beauty of the checklist is precisely in its flexibility. There is no single formula. There is a solid foundation that must be adapted to the individuality of the animal. This adaptation is only possible when the tutor observes and records the dog's behavior, weight, energy, fecal quality, and even willingness to play. Many tutors, when entering the BARF world, are surprised to realize that the practice requires more discipline than they imagined. It is at this point that the temptation arises to give up, believing that it is too much work. But the reality is that, with organization, the process becomes a natural part of the family routine. Serving a balanced meal is now as automatic as filling the food jar was in the past, only now with the advantage of offering the dog live nutrition full of tangible benefits. And there is something even more powerful. The moment of the meal is no longer just a mechanical act and becomes a ritual of connection. The tutor notices the dog's gaze, the energy when receiving the food, the satisfaction in chewing and exploring textures. It's not just nutrition, it is a bond. This is the invisible side of the checklist. More than feeding, it strengthens bonds. But there is still a layer of complexity that needs to be faced. Invisible errors that, if not corrected, can turn a well-intentioned checklist into a silent risk. Exaggerations, lack of control, or wrong choices can have serious consequences. The question that arises is inevitable. How to identify these errors before they become a real health problem? The strength of the BARF checklist lies in its simplicity, but it is precisely this apparent simplicity that can be deceiving. Behind each item, there are invisible risks that, if ignored, can compromise the dog's health. Many tutors believe they are offering a complete meal, but small mistakes accumulated on a daily basis can generate nutritional deficiencies, overloads on the body, and even silent diseases. It is at this point that the checklist stops being just a guide and becomes a compass, showing the path between balance and error. The first risk is in excess bones. Although essential as a source of calcium and for dental cleaning, when offered in a proportion above what is necessary, they can cause severe constipation, whitish stools, and even intestinal obstructions. The attentive tutor learns to observe the feces like a true thermometer. Very hard or with visible fragments are a sign of excess. The fix is simple, but it requires constant vigilance, reducing bones and increasing lean meats until you find the sweet spot. At the other end of the error, there is an excess of organs. Many know the nutritional power of the liver and end up believing that the more, the better. But the reality is the opposite. The liver, when in excess, leads to vitamin A intoxication, which can generate bone pain, joint problems, and even neurological changes. The key is to offer diversity: liver, heart, kidney, spleen, always within limits, never as a dominant portion. The checklist serves precisely to remind you that balance is more important than abundance. Another invisible mistake is the inappropriate use of supplements. The beginner tutor, eager to ensure health, sometimes gets lost in an avalanche of oils, powders, and capsules. Exaggerating omega-3, for example, can alter blood clotting. The same goes for excess supplemental calcium, which causes an imbalance with phosphorus. The daily checklist shows that supplements are fine-tuning, not protagonists. They should be used sparingly, preferably under the guidance of a veterinary nutritionist. But mistakes are not limited to exaggerations. The lack of variety is another recurring problem. Dogs that are always given chicken, always carrots, always liver, end up developing food intolerances and deficiencies in nutrients that are not present in these repetitive ingredients. The skin begins to show signs. The fur loses its luster. The immune system weakens. The solution is clear: vary. Alternate red and white meats, different bones, different vegetables. The checklist is live, not static. It needs to be reviewed and adjusted so as not to become a trap. And there is also a silent error that many ignore, the confusion between quantity and quality. Offering very large portions without considering the energy expended by the dog leads to overweight. On the contrary, restricting too much for fear of gaining weight can lead to muscle loss and bone fragility. The attentive tutor learns to adjust the checklist over time, based on weight, energy, disposition, and even periodic veterinary exams. It is continuous observation that turns the checklist into a living guide, and not into a formula frozen in time. With all these risks mapped, one truth becomes evident. The checklist is not just a list of ingredients, but a system that requires discipline, observation, and constant learning. It does not replace the clinical view, but strengthens the practice of the tutor, making each meal an opportunity to correct routes and avoid damage. And this is where the final revelation arises. If the checklist is able to prevent mistakes, can it also be used as a tool to lead the dog to live longer, with more energy, health, and quality years with the family?